You gotta find your people, the ones that make you feel alright, the kind you wanna stay up with all night. You gotta find your people, the ones that make you feel whole. They won't leave your side when you lose control. The ones that don't let you lose your soul. You gotta find your people, the ones that get the joke, who understand what you're saying before a word is spoke. You gotta find your people that put the needle in the groove. When you're together, you got nothing to prove. When you're together, you got nothing to lose. In a world full of strangers, you don't know who to trust. All you see is danger, trying to find what you lost. You can't go it alone, everybody needs help. You gotta find your people, then you'll find yourself. You gotta find your people that'll call your bluff, who'll ride along when the road is rough. You gotta find your people, the ones that make you feel equal. They pick you up and don't put you down, help you find your way in the lost and found. In a world full of strangers, you don't know who to trust. All you see is danger, trying to find what you lost. You can't go it alone, everybody needs help. You gotta find your people, then you'll find yourself. The ones that understand you, the ones that lend a hand to you, the ones that don't demand anything from you. You gotta find your people, the ones that make you feel alright, that tell you the truth and wish you well. You gotta find your people, then you'll find yourself. You gotta find your people, then you'll find yourself.
Good evening, everyone. Happy Thursday. And as the song says, you got to find your people. You all are part of my people. So, welcome, Sonder fan. My name is Katie Gideon, and I am dialing in from Tulsa, Oklahoma. I got to come back to the States for 3 weeks, so I'm really excited. It means I get to kind of work normal time for these. And honestly, I haven't done a prompt social in a while, but I love them. They're so special. So, if you haven't attended one of the journal prompts socials, these are so wonderful. They're so great, but they're definitely different than our weekly or monthly setups. This is a little less me talking, a lot more listening to music and kind of really digging into your journal in kind of other ways and kind of tackling some of those maybe more intimidating journal pages. And what we like to do with these is provide just a little bit more inspiration and additional context to maybe help you think kind of broader or even narrow these down to kind of tackle these really unique and special pages in the journal. So again, I'm going to be the only one on the camera, but I want to give a huge shout out to my co-facilitator in the chat, Malika, who's there from California. She always does such lovely jobs with these prompts. So I'm always a little jealous that she's in the chat tonight and I'm on screen. But we chatted through this and she gave me some great ideas for these. So these are always just, I think, just really fun, really special. And we're going to get a little maybe deep in the journal prompts, but then we're going to get to end on the really fun make your own bingos, create your own bingos. So it's one of those we're going to dig in, maybe hit us in the feels a little bit, but then bring it back up with positivity and excitement as we embrace the theme and create those bingos. So as always, if you are new, just double check in the chat that it is set to everyone. Everyone is the whole group in that Sonder chat. And if you just have it to hosts and panelists, that does come to just myself and Malika. And so we're always willing to help and answer there. But if you want to chat with the larger group, just double check that that goes to everyone. And it may toggle back and forth throughout the call. So just maybe sure double check there. And then I'm already seeing some of our returning socialers. You guys just brighten my day, seeing you come across the chat. And I started to see some of the maybe first time socialers. So once again, if this is your first journal prompt social, or if this is your first social of the new year, or your first kind of social joining us, would love to see that in the chat with just a quick kind of hand raise or me or those type of things, because we always love acknowledging our new folks. But also, again, you guys are in great hands with our returning socialers. They're so great. They have such wonderful ideas for this, and it's just a supportive group. So as always, remember to be kind and courteous to yourself and others. No promotions or spam. Respect everyone's privacy. No hate speech or bullying. Limit repetitive product and accessory questions. But if you do have some of those questions, do let us know, because we certainly want to make sure we're pointing you guys in the right direction. And then as always, redirect customer care inquiries to our team, hello@silkandsonder.com. And then as always, Sonder Socials are a tool to help elevate your emotional health through the power of community, but you are responsible for your own emotions, well-being, and decisions. And some of these may bring up kind of those feelings. I feel like, coming off the holidays, starting a new year, there's all of that kind of pressure, and even just some of those hidden feelings that may or may not come up, but they tend to come up in the journal prompt one. So we always say take a deep breath, but this should never be negatively triggering. It should just be something to kind of challenge yourself, give yourself a good hard look in the mirror, but not to the point of detriment that it's going to, really, really impact your day, or those type of things. But we love to celebrate all of the highs and acknowledge all of the lows and everything in between with these. So take what you want from this, participate in as much or as little as you want, share as much or as little as you want, even if you're just here to listen to the music, kind of get the vibe, or just to take notes. But we are glad you're here just as you are. So rolling into the first month's theme with prosperity. And so I did one of the monthly setups, and I said, I really don't know what prosperity means outside of just general context clues. So I was not going to have enough time to connect to the idea of prosperity, it seems. So I went down the synonym kind of discovery, and wholeness really spoke to me, really tapped into where I think my headspace is, and it just was far more resonating. So I'm kind of doing a combination of wholeness as well as kind of that larger idea of prosperity. So these are a couple quotes that I'm kind of thinking on this week, especially going into these prompts. And so for me, the wholeness and freedom, who seek is our true nature, who we really are, and that true prosperity is appreciating what you have and what you are. And then the wholeness for humans depends on their ability to own their own shadow. So I liked this idea of wholeness is accepting the good, the bad, and everything in between of ourselves. It is acknowledging that not all of us are perfect. Not all of us are, I feel like we've had our good days, we've had our bad days, those maybe not so kind qualities have shown. So I think it's acknowledging and embracing all of those things that kind of make me kind of uniquely me. I have my really good traits that I love, and then I also know that I have a little bit of a short temper, so I have to remind myself to think before I speak. But that's part of embracing me for all that is whole, and thus making me a little bit more prosperous as I go through life. So those are my thoughts. And like I said, prosperity, not quite resonating, but wholeness is really what's gonna work for me for January. So we have a really fun opening activity. I always love these because art is not my thing, but I love the challenge it creates. And I love the iconography that you can use to kind of put, pictures worth 1,000 words. So it's the iconography that you can then use to represent kind of all of these things that maybe you haven't quite tapped into yet. And then we're going to tackle those journal prompts on page 14 and 15. I'm going to break them down a little bit differently. And then we're going to end with creating our own bingo, which is on page 21. So you're going to find a blank page in your journal for our opening activity, which is a prosperity sky. And don't worry, this is a lot of words on the screen, and I will go back and forth. And on my next slide that has my examples, I kind of broke it down a little bit into kind of what I call the end goal, or what I always call the so what factor, the why are we here, what do you want to do? Because as I was reading this, I kind of got a little tripped up with kind of the order that I then chose to do something. So we're wanting to explore your personal definition of prosperity with that visual representation. And we're starting with that big idea of the sky, which can be limitless and potential dreams, the vastness. And again, this could be a gradient of blue, it can be a sunset, sunrise, starry night, space, or any kind of other representation of this kind of vastness. It also could be a field if green is more your color. And you can always include clouds, sun, stars, of those type of things. And then now we're going to break it down into what are things that symbolize prosperity to you. And so you can bring in some abstract symbols, or you can even use some kind of figurative symbols. So you can include flying birds, which could represent freedom or abundance. Maybe you want to include a sun because that stands for new beginnings, growth, start of something new. Blooming flowers is also growth and beauty and cultivation and endurance. Coins and jewels, obviously, with some wealth and abundance thrown in there. Or you can also do a ladder, kind of reaching toward the sky, which is kind of a little bit goal driven or ascension, or even just kind of a key, kind of unlocking the vastness as kind of something there. And then you can always add additional things that represent prosperity to you personally. These could be lucky charms, meaningful objects, or things that represent cherished memories. So as I said, this is my example and kind of my summary of what we want to create a sky scene. I actually started with what represents kind of the goal or the figurative item because I realized if I just colored the whole thing blue, I was not going to be able to, put as much things on it, because shout out to my nephew and his crayon collection, because I'm staying with my parents. So I was limited on my materials. And so then you're going to bring in other symbols that represent areas that you can feel prosperous in. And again, these can be real or design, fictional, all the fun things. And then you can include, again, some of those symbols of luck or good fortune that have meaning to you. So with my little sky, I went with the ladder for me, and I approached it with like, what are things that help me achieve goals? So each of those rungs is kind of a personality celebrate that I celebrate with that wholeness in myself. So grit, determination, try, persistence, confidence, gratitude are kind of all the rungs that I use to climb the ladder to infinity in the sky. Visually, I always think of, as a year passes, you climb up a rung of ladder. So it spoke to me, even like a staircase. And then the weird green things are my friends and family, because they're that kind of integral support that kind of, again, adds some of that grounding. The kind of swirly things represent almost, I've been watching maybe a little too sci-fi, almost like wormholes or kind of the unknown, because to me that represents the present and the future. So maybe my ladder is taking me into those wormholes or galaxies to be explored, to be determined. And then the musical notes, I ground everything in music or song. So for me, that represents all of my hobbies. I even can think back songs that I listened to as I was like going to soccer practice, or songs that I played when I was in orchestra, or things that associated with reading. I feel like it's one of those. And then the shooting star, I consider myself a bit of a shooting star. So it includes the things that I kind of rely on to achieve some of those ideas. So for me, it's always a smile. I feel like it just gives me confidence. It gives people confidence in me. So it's kind of that overall kind of enthusiastic idea that I use to represent myself. And then I celebrate the background that I have, that I've come from, where I've come from, and then kind of my personality. The little hearts are just that I have great love and support systems. And then two of my good luck charms that I considered are waves, ocean waves. That one got a little weird, wonky, but it also, I have two of them in kind of tattoo form. So waves have always been something for me because it's always the coming and the going and the changing and the responding. I'm an oceanography major. I was in the military and the Navy for 10 years. So that always represents the kind of how can you um, learn to work with the waves. So I always feel like that for me is a good kind of euphemism for life. And then anchor. Anchor for me has always been reach for the stars but stay grounded. So that's kind of where it's been. And so this is my prosperity sky. I will go back and forth between the two slides as you work on yours, just as your opening activity. And we'll see you soon. Thank you everyone for sharing. I appreciate all of the thoughts, the honesty, as well as the different approaches. Because yes, sometimes art is not our thing, but I love the opportunity to kind of use that part of my brain to kind of just represent all of those thoughts and feelings just slightly different. It kind of taps into a little bit more of the creative side. And as I always tell the facilitators when in our meetings, is that, I showed up for the trackers and more of the analytical thinking, but I've stayed and embraced a little bit more of these kind of more creative prompts just because it's a fun visual and it just kind of has you approach something just a little bit different, which sometimes you may come up with the same kind of answers and ideas, but it's just kind of a slightly different path to get there. And I always think that's really fun and really special. So thank you for sharing. If you would like to share these in the Silk and Sonder app, I know we would love to see your prosperity skies. So now diving into the journal prompts. So this is going to be on page 14 and 15 in your journal. And just to frame this, I am a fan of storytelling. So I have kind of broken up these into what I would consider a bit of a story. So just because I have framed them this way does not mean you have to treat them that way. You can absolutely work on each of the pages just as is, the squares exactly as is, but I've kind of made some small adjustments, just a little tweaks, and also provided just some other kind of ways to approach these prompts. So we're going to start with the one on the bottom of page 14 with I call it the why are we here, your introduction. So why is prosperity important to you and how would achieving prosperity in different areas of your life make you feel? And then it's a kind of, so again, how do you define prosperity? Do you maybe defer to or prefer to use a synonym? You can also kind of associate it more with traits or personality or action, those type of things. And again, these can be a list, it can be in letter form. And again, a way I always do it was, what would make you feel more complete? And then again, you can also use this as a celebration if you have achieved some of these kind of already, kind of acknowledging that. So I'm going to give you some time to work on this particular section, and I would love to hear why prosperity is important to you and what ways do you think we do that, and kind of how you think it can make you feel in different areas of your life. And we'll see you soon. Feel free to continue to share any of these responses in the chat. I want to be just aware of the time and what we need to cover. So I am going to move back, but if you ever need me to go back to a different slide for context, just let me know when I go off camera. So now that we've kind of set our introduction or our background information for our story, we now move into kind of now setting our main character's background. What areas of your life currently feel prosperous, and list them out. And again, I'm a categories person, so I love the idea of using some of those things that we already have. And at the same time, I also am aware that it's a little bit late in the week coming off the holidays, and sometimes you can't be as creative as you want to be. So just answering some questions is always a good way to go. So you can always use the categories based on the intentions in Silk and Saunders. So those are the page 9, spiritual health, physical health, money management, personal life, key relationships, professional goals. If you've done the Wheel of Life setup with any of us in the past or in past journals, those different categories include education, financial, health, career, family, spiritual, relationships, romance, home environment, and adventure. But then maybe you don't want to focus on any of these categories because you cannot be put into a category. Maybe you want to focus specifically on your routines, your self-care goals, or maybe other ways of getting out of your comfort zone, or other areas that you can kind of break your life down into a little bit that you could kind of show prosperity or wholeness or some of that ideas kind of connected to it. And that's going to be kind of the background of our main character for our little prosperity story. So again, I'm going to stop talking, turn on some music, and we will see you soon to kind of discover what areas in your life currently feel prosperous. Thank you, main characters, for providing not only, again, the introduction, but some of that background information, introducing us to some of your supporting characters, and acknowledging some of those areas in your life that currently helps you feel prosperous. And I think, as some people have already alluded to in the chat a little bit, with every story and every hero or heroine's journey, we're now going to flip over to page 15, because what always happens in those journeys is some sort of obstacle or limiting belief that may be holding you back from achieving prosperity or wholeness. So, how can you overcome these obstacles or beliefs? So, now again, as we are writing this story, we can acknowledge some of those obstacles. And so, again, other ways to think of this, these could be people in your life, situations in your life, settings in your life, or even things in your life. Or you can move to some of those crunchier things, as Bailey, one of our other facilitators, calls them. And so these can be less tangible. Maybe it's a obstacle mindset, lack of confidence, limiting emotional barriers, physical barriers, or even, like I said, something crunchy that you can't quite define but doesn't feel into those categories, but something that is limiting. And with this particular exercise, I am definitely one of those that I always want to find an answer and I always want to find a way forward. But in some of these situations, sometimes just the acknowledgement of them as a barrier or an obstacle may or may not have the answer yet. And so I think it's always one of those, you can treat it a little bit as like a fact finding exercise or just a brain dump, because some of those things may not have a solution. Sometimes they may not always have a solution, but I always like to ground things a little bit in reality there. And another kind of great thing I always like to acknowledge with obstacles and limiting beliefs is, do you need help or support to maybe overcome these obstacles? Because our main characters, you don't have to do this alone. But I was already seeing again some of those. So definitely take a deep breath. You can certainly take whatever space you need when it comes to this. You can share in the chat with what as much or as little as you want, but know that this is a supportive community and that it looks like a lot of people are already putting into words maybe some of those obstacles and limiting beliefs we are thinking of. So again, we're at the top of page 15 and we will see you soon. Thank you all for sharing all of your obstacles and honest transparency and just the acknowledgement and understanding and the fact that you are putting it out there, putting it down on paper to sit with it is really powerful and really elegant. Thank you for doing that. But now on our hero and heroine journey, main characters, we get to come to kind of what I think is the best part, which is the kind of epilogue or the ending, or maybe that kind of really good cliffhanger to lead you to your second book, if it's a duology series, all of those things. So now we get to imagine a day in your prosperous life. From the moment you wake up to when you go to sleep, what activities fill your day? Who are you with? What environments do you find yourself in? This is now that really kind of, I always think of like the Lord of the Rings montage. I'm stuck in a little bit of a fantasy world right now, but that kind of ending, kind of elegant, kind of frosty montage of where everyone is, what they're doing, what all of this potential can be. And so again, can be grounded in reality, or you can kind of step into that wishing fictional space of it, or even just writing to a future you. And so you can break this down into smaller sections. You can focus on the activities that would make you feel prosperous with your time and energy. You can bring along someone or make this kind of a solo adventure. And then you can also think in terms of where you're most whole, or where do you feel most whole. And what I love when you imagine a day in the prosperous life, or just imagining a day in your life in general, you can tap into those five senses. So if you're a little stuck, it's more of like you can start with what do you hear? What do you smell? What do you see? What do you touch? What do you chase? Kind of all of that kind of building of that kind of day. And then, as always, this can be written, or it can be sketches or just prose to describe it. But at the same time, you can also just kind of sit and maybe listen to the music a little bit, to just kind of take a little bit of a deep breath, close your eyes, and let your mind wander with what you would imagine your prosperous life was, with the acknowledgement of those previous obstacles, bringing in that definition of prosperity, acknowledging all of your supporting cast. How can we end this kind of prosperous journey in the story that we're telling on these 2 pages? And so I will give you some time to work on that, and we'll see you soon. Thank you, everyone, for sharing. And I appreciate all of your prosperous days that you've listed there, and obviously humoring me a little bit with connecting these prompts a little bit to storytelling. So thank you very much for sharing. And again, if you just kind of used it a little bit for inspiration and take those notes, as always, it's always just a fun way to kind of connect all of these. I find them a little bit easier to work on. They come a little less scary, a little bit more manageable, but also realizing that these prompts do tend to find kind of some of those more darker, scarier things. But part of embracing and becoming a little bit more prosperous is embracing kind of all the good, the bad, and everything in between as we go. And that's why I always like the prompts that kind of bring that up. So thank you for sharing. Now we're moving on to kind of the fun stuff. So please join us on page 21 for the Create Your Own Bingo. Like I said, went through kind of that whole roller coaster of a story, and now we're going to end a little bit more on that kind of lively note. And so this is a really fun way to embrace self-care this month. So add activities, get inspiration, and challenge yourself for bingo. So I have a couple other kind of inspiration ideas there. You can obviously start with what practice you want to start, stop and continue, what makes you happy, what are maybe some new interests and hobbies. You can pull from your habit trackers, or you can kind of do it that way. But maybe this can relate to your journal a little bit, attend a social, work on your color page. Maybe it's a beginning of the year bingo, maybe it's embracing some winter or hygge activities. You can always do a themed idea, self-care, routines, activities to do solo or with your people. And then you can also categorize maybe the rows or the columns. So maybe you have a column for, spending time with your people, maybe another column for your hobbies, maybe one that's just winter activities, maybe another row is, something a little bit different, something a little bit new. How can you recharge? How can you push yourself outside of your comfort zone? And then here are all the different inspirations that I have with activities here. So I will just go back and forth between all of these for some just added ideas, added flair, different things with examples there. And then at the end, I included some winter slow living, January adventure list, as well as instant mood boosters and little ways to look after yourself at work. And then you've got other self-care ideas. So I'm going to turn on some music. We're going to kind of end on a high note, wrap up all of those fun things, and we'll see you soon for the closing. Thank you, everyone, for sharing not only your really, really fun creative ideas when it comes to the self care bingo board, and also kind of the themes and the ideas that you're going with. Love those. And as always, thank you so much for sharing all of your really, really lovely parts on the prompt on page 14 and 15. There was just so much connection and being seen and being heard. And I just love being able to see those in the socials. But then again, ending a little bit more on that kind of upbeat, exciting palate cleanser of a bingo. So, we hit you in the feels, but then we come in with a dance party. So, as always, we would love to see your pages in the Silk and Sonder app if you choose to share them. And as always, we are still in that beta phase of the 24/7 personalized coaching session, which these have been really, really great in the real time aspect of it, especially if you get stuck on prompts or if you need a little bit of help still trying to figure out what your word of the year is going to be. But obviously, something to consider, and definitely reach out to the concierge at silkandsonder.com because you can ask any of those questions, and those can be on content as well as financial questions. And then this is a copy of my playlist. I will include that link, the Spotify link, in the chat. But again, thank you very much for joining us. I had a wonderful time spending this hour with you on a Thursday as we continue to embrace the start of hopefully not only a prosperous year in 2025, but certainly a prosperous January. So I hope to see you at future events. Hope you have a great rest of your week and weekend, and we'll see you soon. Bye.
You know I love music. And every time I hear something hot, it makes me want to move. It makes me want to have fun. But it's something about this joint right here. This joint right here, it makes me want to... Let it go. Can't let this thing called love get away from you. Feel free right now, go do what you want to do. Can't let nobody take it away from you, from me, from we. No time for moping around, are you kidding? And no time for negative vibes, cause I'm winning. It's been a long week, I put in my hardest. Gonna live my life, feel so good to get it right. So I like what I see when I'm looking at me, when I'm walking past the mirror. Don't stress through the night at a time, and my life ain't worried about if you feel it. Got my head on straight, I got my vibe right, I ain't gonna let you kill it. See, I wouldn't change my life's just fine, 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 fine. Ooh, fine, 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 fine. Ooh, just fine, 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 fine. Ooh, see, I wouldn't change my life's just feels so good when you're doing all the things that you wanna do. Get the best out of life, treat yourself to something new. Keep your head up high in yourself, believe in you, believe in me. Having a really good time, I'm not complaining, and I'ma still wear a smile if it's raining. I gotta enjoy myself regardless. I appreciate life, I'm so glad that it's mine. So I like what I see when I'm looking at me, when I'm walking past the mirror. Ain't worried about you and what you're gonna do, I'm a lady, so I'm